Our Regent Peak team is honored to have the opportunity to meet some really interesting individuals who we feel have a unique life story to tell. It's one of the reasons we decided to create this series, Peak Performers. We want to share their stories because we found their creativity, drive, and dedication are motivating. We know everyone is busy, and we wanted to keep these interviews moving, so there are only 5 questions. We hope these interviews you hear today will inspire you to become a peak performer. So let's go. Hi, I'm Craig Robson, founding principal and managing director of Regent Peak Wealth Advisors. Today, joining us for our first Peak Performers video series is Greg Pennington. Greg is the managing principal of Pennpoint Consulting Group, a leadership development consulting firm which strives to enhance leadership skills across individuals, teams, and organizations. I've had the good pleasure of working with Greg for the past 18 months, as we've hired Greg to help our team at Regent Peak in developing and enhancing their leadership skills. Greg, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure to be with you, Craig.
So to kick off Peak Performers, I'd love to ask you my first question, which is, Greg, if you look back in your history and your career, maybe taking us to your first professional job, how, if at all, did that shape the current role that you perform today?
No, that goes back a bit. So I don't know. The first professional job I had was actually the head of human resources for savings and loan. What's probably most interesting about that is that my background is psychology. So it probably struck me most in that I actually talked my way into this role. So it was one of these interesting points where I thought, even with this background and understanding people or interviewing people, how do I translate that from a kind of an academic background to a corporate setting? So I would say that, and it was the right timing for a relatively small firm, did not have a human resources organization at the time. So to be able to see an opportunity where I could make a difference, being one of the first or one of the few, that was in a broad sense. I would say that probably shaped me significantly, certainly as a transition from coming out of graduate school to working into a corporate setting, and then probably more specifically, what do you do with psychology in a way that's applying it to real world kinds of opportunities.
So Greg, if you look back, what are maybe 1 or 2 things that, in hindsight, you can say really helped shape your role today? Any kind of individuals or any experiences that you look back on and say, like, these folks really helped take me to the next level?
Here in Atlanta, I'll give you one quick example. I mean, I really had the opportunity to do a little bit of work with Maynard Jackson, and I thought, this is just so fascinating to have someone with that stature, just to be able to get a chance to see them in a real personal, human way. But I also remember him as one of those persons that was always opening doors for other people. So whatever his background was, whatever his stature was, there's still something pretty relaxed and human and down to earth about him. So that would be one person of many that stands out in terms of the way I do things. The other part I would say, and this is more of a composite of people, I might work for people who have been really, really charismatic, in a genuine way, and so some of that charisma was just both being comfortable using their own sense of humor in settings, but also this tenacity about, let me make sure that we're getting the work done that we have to get done.
So as you look backwards, right, and we all do from time to time, right, what are 1 or 2 things maybe in hindsight you wish you would have done differently to get you to where you are today?
So this is a tricky question. If my children ask me that question, I start off by saying that, well, if you're fundamentally, like I am, fundamentally pleased with where I am now, then I dare not tamper with the fabric of going backwards in time. My wife tells me that I cannot stand time travel films, because if you go back and change one thing, then we're not sitting here talking. So in one real sense, I don't think I would redo anything. But the kernel of that is that everything that I've experienced, to the degree I figured out what I learned from it, and to the degree I figured out how to use that to shape where I go next, I don't know if I would change anything going backwards. Now, the companion piece of that is, if I run into a similar situation, I might not do it exactly the same, but I wouldn't change anything, especially because everything I've done and everything I think people have done, you should be able to pause and say, okay, what did you learn from that? If you ran into a similar situation, what would you do differently but it's more of a going forward, statement than it is going backwards one.
Yeah, it's like that statement, we learn more from our failures than our successes.
Yeah. But the other part I add to that is that sometimes people don't learn from their successes. And so if you said to someone, what made you so successful in your first 5 years? And someone said, I don't know, it was just somehow or another, everything fell into place. Then that doesn't contribute to you being able to be that much more effective going forward. Now there's this balancing act between being able to say that we were successful because I did X. So it's not that extreme on the cocky side, but it is really intentionally being able to focus in on, I clearly did these things, and those are the things that I can control. I can't control the macroeconomics of the world, but I can control what parts can I control. And if I can detail what did I do that contributed to my success, then I have a higher probability of repeating it. And the same thing about failure, right? If I know what part of it I played, then I have a higher probability of avoiding it the next time around.
My first couple questions were kind of maybe taking us backwards. I'm going to take you forward, right? So it's 2022, right? The beginning of the year here. What are you working on right now that you're super excited about? Share with us maybe some initiatives that are getting you really pumped up.
Yeah. So 2022, I was saying to you, this is my 10th year in this firm. It also will be my 69th year on Earth next month. So somewhere in that combination of 10 years of working in this firm and then thinking, I don't know, 5 years from now, certainly 10 years from now, I'm done with this. So my focus has been more on what are the things that I think I do extremely well, that I really have a lot of excitement about, and that actually add some value. So that makes me come down to the point of I'd love to continue to do more of the one-on-one coaching I've been doing. It really is a bit of a transition from George Floyd and others, and the focus on DE&I. For me, it's doing the coaching more broadly around what's the responsibility of privilege. So anyone I'm working with, leaders as an example, what do you do with the power that you have? What do you do with the privilege that you have of being in that role? So the coaching for me is getting more and more focused in that arena. Fewer people and more focused on, you've got this power, what are you going to do with it? You've got this privilege, what are you going to do with it? And that's regardless of color. So it's not like, a version of white privilege or black privilege. It's you in a position of influence, what are you going to do with it? So that's one part of it. The second one is that I really do want to spend more time in larger audiences, because that makes it more efficient. So if a one-on-one is great, one-on-many adds another ripple to what I'm talking about doing. And then I probably have one other book I want to do by the end of the year. And then on the companion piece of that is that I draw. And so I found myself now coming out of this last break, toggling back and forth between what am I doing on consulting and what's the next painting, drawing I want to do. So I'm spending more time kind of integrating what I would say is the personal passions, which for me are judo and drawing, and kind of the obvious ones of family. But the judo and drawing become metaphors for the work that I do. So.
My final question, right? If you weren't in the role you are today, right? Having all these experiences, what could you see yourself doing differently?
Yeah, so probably for most of my life, I would say I could have been, should have been, an R&B artist like Teddy Pendergrass. Now, I don't know if I would still be sitting in the same chair with that, and the voice didn't contribute to that pulling it off. I really do. If I wasn't doing this, I would imagine could have made a living and enjoyed it just being an artist. But the other part of it is I really did enjoy working in corporate setting. So independent practice is exciting and has some pluses to it. There's an extension of impact that also comes from being like a senior leader in a corporation, regardless of size, just because there are more resources that you have at your disposal. So sometimes I would think about that. If I wasn't on this independent practice, what would it have been like being a senior officer in a company with the same kind of commitment, the same kind of passion, but a different set of resources that not so much at your disposal, but at your point of influence. So it's somewhere between Teddy Pendergrass, an artist, and chief executive officer of this mega place with gazillion of dollars to give away.
So in our next lives, we'll look forward to seeing you do that. Got it. So look, I promise to keep Peak Performers very brief. So with that, I just want to thank Greg Pennington for his time today, and thank you for joining us in our Peak Performers video series.
No, my pleasure again. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you again for listening to this latest episode of Peak Performers. Our wish for each of you, in your own personal way, is that this conversation inspires you to keep climbing.